let's just say you graduated high school in 2021, 2022, and you're like, I want to get a computer science degree. You started your degree and there was no such thing as vibe coding. And now there is. Like, imagine how kind of cooked you are if you didn't learn those tools. And guess what? There's no way, there's no chance that your university was teaching you about prompting when you started your degree in 21. Like, they have not updated their curriculums with any of this stuff. And so there's a whole bunch of students and young people that I think are seeing this, like how woefully behind all these computer science and engineering degrees are, and they're seeing all these people that are learning it on their own through YouTube or smaller community colleges. And there's just a whole bunch of stats that like the new generations, like they're just dropping out of the college path, and they're saying, hey, if I really care about this thing, like I'll just learn it on my own. Everybody around me seems to be doing it as well, which is really motivating. But Gen Z has a couple cool things going in their favor. And I talk about it in a video that's coming out. But one of them is that there's no stats, unfortunately, so I can't compare it to the silent generation. But the silent generation, I would say, was like the last similar looking generation to Gen Z. What happened with the silent generation? Well, they had the Great Depression. They had 25% unemployment. Kind of feels like maybe we're heading there with the AI stuff, right? So there's a lot of like angst with all that. They had some major social, reforms around that time as well. Like they had the Great New Deal, and this is from an American lens, but I'm sure it kind of passes a little bit to Europe and other places too. They had massive social reforms around then. FDR, Social Security was created. Agree or disagree, but these are like massive fundamental changes that are still in America today, and they were all said to be temporary programs at the time. They've lasted 100 years, so these things came about that fundamentally altered society and the rules of the playbook. And then they had this massive World War II pop up. They're all like they get off the back of this massive depression and this collapse, and then they're all drafted to go to war in like one of the most horrific wars of all time. And then the few who, well, not the few, but like the men and the women who make it back, what do they do after all this like horrendous calamity, like terrible economics, terrible wars? They come home and their senator thinks that they're like a commie, right? And then McCarthyism happens. All this crazy stuff happens to them. And yet they all bang like rabbits. And that's how the baby boomer generation started, right? Like they were still optimistic about the future, and the proof of that was all the children that they were having. And there were some things that worked out for them economically by the end of the World War II, if you were in the United States, which was good. But I see like similar parallels with Gen Z right now, where I don't know, hopefully we don't have like a massive war, but we have this like tidal wave of, I think, unemployment coming in a lot of white collar jobs and a lot of jobs that people are going to school for right now that will just not exist by the time that they graduate. And so the kids who haven't decided to go to school yet or are still thinking about it, they have two choices. And their choices are either go to school and do a profession like everyone told me, from Gen X to millennials, rack up a whole bunch of student debt that, by the way, you can't declare bankruptcy on in the United States because you can't do that with student loans. So that's actually kind of risky now. Going to school for a degree, for a job that might not exist, and then I get a bunch of debt that I can't pay off because the job I trained for doesn't exist. Or I could take the traditional risky route, which is just start a business, which actually now looks less risky, right? Why does it look less risky? It's like, well, you can write off your debt if you start a business, declare bankruptcy and start from scratch. I mean, you study enough entrepreneurs, that like they all had like 1 billion failed businesses. So it's like, you just got to get over the failure part. But now it's like super, super easy to start a business. You can have like one-click corporate registration. You can have an army of AI employees if you just take, Nick Sariev's, my friend Nick Sariev's AI courses, and now you can run ClaudeBot employees. Like, it's never been easier to start a business in that sense. You're going to have more competition now, but there's so many, the cost barrier has been dramatically lowered. And AI really is like an anti-monopolizing force at the end too, because a lot of these corporations move a lot slower than individuals. Like these corporations are freaking out. They're talking about AI disruptions and all that stuff. And they have to work with all their vendors. Like their vendors are going to really try and lock them into their system and say, hey, use Adobe's AI. Don't go to Claude or whatever. Like we have our own. You guys have been working with us for 10 years. And so a lot of these companies are going to be very, very slow. You as an individual don't have to be slow. You can switch models any like minute if you really wanted to. And all these things are just their employees at like the tips of your fingers, and they're virtually, you know, free. So anyways, long story short, my argument is that Gen Z is in a really good spot to take risks, and that's a very good state for the economy. Now, there's a lot of things that are going to work against them. You know, depression rates really high, relationships are not good right now, and all that gets in the way of opportunity and well-being and a clear mental state. And that's why I think it's like very important to maintain that. But in terms of opportunity, it's like the best time to be alive right now. I think the next 10-year window, you're going to see a whole bunch of, I don't know if like, you know, we'll see some like innovative businesses pop up, but I think you're going to see a whole bunch of like really just simple cottage industries that would probably not be able to exist a few years ago. Like people will be starting new fashion brands, and people will be starting new food lines, and a ton of people are going to get into content creation. And it's just going to be easier than it was 10 to 20 years ago to do any of those things. And it's going to be amazing. And I think people's tastes are catching up to it too, where they don't want to buy something from like a massive corporation. So I'm rambling on here, but the big picture I hope that people take away from this is that Gen Z is in a really good situation to follow their passions and to really execute on them. And now it's just a matter of like discipline and surrounding yourself with like a good community that allows you to do that and inspires you to do that. But I'm super bullish on them. And then, you know, when you do make your bag as Gen Z, now you have an asset that you can't get debased as well, that you can store your time and energy into, and you can use it to also get a whole bunch of new customers. And it's going to be good. It's going to be good. That's all.
The most effective way to buy Bitcoin is to DCA, dollar cost average, or ECA, euro cost average, into your Bitcoin position long term with the Relay app. It's the consistency of buying every day, every week, every month that compounds and really builds the position that you want to have in Bitcoin. And for that, I'm using Relay. Relay is Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks, or anything else. This is a tool, an app, the biggest one in Europe, that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. Relay is also self-custodial. So from the first second onwards, where you buy the Bitcoin on Relay, they are in your self-custodial control. They never have the keys to your Bitcoin. No freezing of your assets, no counterparty risk, no rug pulling whatsoever. And honestly, it's the simplest app that I've ever used in the whole Bitcoin ecosystem. Super easy to set up and super easy to buy your Bitcoin consistently. So set up your DCA and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups, because MicroSeed is not selling the washer. MicroSeed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started started today, and you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Finally, we have BTC Prague back in 2026, and this year I'm not only speaking on a panel, but I'm actually going to present an interesting new angle, a perspective, a Bitcoin thesis at BTC Prague this year for the first time ever. I've never done that on any other conference, so this will be a fun one. If you listen to this show on a regular basis, I would love to meet you in Prague this year. It's very high signal, no noise, and Prague is just a freaking amazing city with awesome drinks and a lot of good food. Use code Robin to get 10% off, and if you buy with Bitcoin, you get an additional 5% off your ticket price. I'll see you there in Prague. I love that. And I have two voices now in my head. The one saying like, I 100% see that. I see a lot of my friends, a lot of my environment trying to get out of their job, trying to do their own businesses or already doing their own businesses. And people want to less work for big corporations. They want to more work for either startups or themselves or doing freelancing or starting their own business, something along those lines where they either work just for themselves, for a small group, or like for small startup, not for these huge corporations that I definitely see already in my friend circle also. But then I also, and you talked about that in your video also, is this luxury poverty thing where we buy so many useless stuff, things that have no meaning whatsoever. And I don't know if this like just relates to every generation to a certain degree, that we always overconsume, especially with the fiat money. I just feel like it's a lot also in my generation. And of course, there's like, not everyone will be an entrepreneur, not everyone will be building the new renaissance and all of that. So I get like every generation has their winners and losers, or losers is a hard word, but the production people and the consuming people. How do you look also at that side of Gen Z, kind of like the negative side of Gen Z, or is that in every generation anyways the case?
Yeah, I think there is like a big purpose crisis right now. And so I say all these things coming from a place of privilege where like I've known what my purpose is since I was like 9 years old. And I consider myself like that's more than my wealth, more than my freedom, more than my relationships. Like that is the thing that I am probably most lucky to have. I don't know why I have it. I couldn't tell you like something that I did, but all I know is like, you know, I've known what it was since I was like 8 or 9. And I feel really sad for people who have a hard time figuring that out. I don't pity them. I just like, I don't know what that feels like to not really know what, you know, what my role is in life. And so I use this term to try and, you know, that has helped me sometimes when I'm like a little confused about it, called like finding your superpower. And a lot of entrepreneurs have done this where it's like, sit down with a journal or introspect a little bit and figure out like, what can you do better than anyone else or like most people? What comes easy to you and what is hard for other people? And sometimes you can figure it out with like an hour of deep meditation, and sometimes you can't. And if you can't, then, you know, hopefully you have a whole handful of people you can go to and just sit them down and be honest and ask them. And hopefully you get some overlapping answers and you can kind of like start there. But a lot of people don't take the time to do that. I hope more people do. I try and push people to do it. But I think as it relates to like the downside, I think when you have a lack of purpose in your life, then you don't really have any discipline when it comes to money. And you probably don't have any discipline when it comes to almost anything else. Same with your health, same with like your mind. If you don't know what you're here for to do, if the path is not clear, then like go where your dopamine goes, and your dopamine kind of becomes your lead, your North Star. And I think a lot of people have been taken advantage of. I don't look at corporations as these like insidious blobs that think in like, oh, let's hijack everyone's dopamine through gambling and all that. Like they're just going where the money is. And you know, I'm hoping that every company that makes a Labubu or, you know, a Kalshi, like I hope those people have a greater purpose and they're just using their tools and marketing to get there. But maybe there are some insidious people out there that do all the fiat operations. But I don't think that their express reasoning is like, I want to take advantage of all these like dopamine addled people. I think that they justify it in their mind as something else. But certainly there's a lot of temptation in the fiat land. And it works very well in people who just don't really value their money and they don't value their time. And they don't know how to best apply their money and time to build a better life for themselves. So I understand it. And I like, you know, I'm not here to scold people who spend money on like a Labubu or something like that. Like I bought one for the video, but you know, I bought it to advance my purpose, which is to make a message. But a lot of people are just like, it's fleeting sort of, it's fleeting sort of like satisfaction. And it sucks, but people can sometimes live a very long time just going from one fleeting, you know, hit of dopamine to another.
The first thing that every Bitcoiner does, and the most important activity that every Bitcoiner keeps on doing, is buying Bitcoin. And I personally use Relay to buy and sometimes also spend or sell my Bitcoin. And there are two main reasons why I do so. The first one is it's Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks or anything else. This is a tool, an app that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. The second one is self-custody. They give you the keys to your Bitcoin the moment you buy them. You never give them the control over your Bitcoin, and you don't have to trust them because you can verify that you and only you have the keys to your Bitcoin. There's no third-party risk. There's no freezing of your assets. There's no rug pulling. There's nothing of that. Download Relay, the app, on your phone or go to relay.app on your browser and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro-seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro-seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io.